Hello, everybody. How's it all going? I'm loving reading everyone in the chat, and we've only just started. You guys are chatting already, and that is the joy of the PLM community. So, if you haven't already and you don't have the chat open, we would love it if you could let us know where you're tuning in from. We also have a poll that I will push go live in a second, and as I've warned these amazing ladies already, this is my first time using Riverside properly. So if we disappear, if a poll doesn't work, guys, just bear with me. We will be good and we will get through it together. But today's session kicks off the start of our Unpopular Opinions webinar series. Every year, I think for the past 3 years now, every May I do a series for PLM, a free webinar series called Month of Marketing. And this year I just wanted to do something juicy and give it a sprinkle of fun and a fun little title. So Unpopular Opinions is the theme of this month, and it comes from a place of I think I have 10 hours screen time now. I was going to say 12 hours, but we're down 2 hours, so we're slowly getting there. It comes from a place of high screen time and spending a lot of time primarily on LinkedIn. My friends are cool marketing experts, right? And I just feel like everyone says the same thing. So this month, I'm hoping we are going to be saying the things that people aren't saying. Um, this session I've been excited about for quite the while. When these guys introduce themselves, I will kind of look at my mic for you there, guys, because I can see you in the chat. But this is a session I've been excited about for quite a while because we're talking about B2B, which is notoriously quite a unsexy, unexciting industry. And specifically today, we're exploring the thought that B2B doesn't have to be boring. And I think that there is no better team to make that case than the wonderful. To me, they're here. So I will point round at these lovely ladies. It is the wonderful Slate team. If you haven't come across Slate yet, Slate is a social media content creation platform. But the reason these ladies are here today isn't just because it's a fantastic and fantabulous product. But because I think they are one of the most distinct B2B brands on the internet right now. They show up like creators, they have built community in multiple places, and they've made B2B feel like something you want to follow, not that you have to follow. So with that, I will let these lovely ladies introduce themselves. And Carmen, because you are on my head, we will start with you.
Okay, hi, I'm Carmen. I lead social and content strategy at Slate. And I also do I never know what to call it, but like create a little bit of content on the side on TikTok and Instagram and Substack. And so I think of myself as being firmly embedded in the algorithms. And I think that the content that I create also extends to the work I do at Slate. And I like to be critical about algorithms and the way they impact the work that we do and our lives in general. And yeah, I started in December. I just finished my first full quarter with Slate, having a ton of fun with this incredible team, and happy to be here to talk about B2B. I'm going to pass it to Christina Lee.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Lee. I head up our marketing efforts over at Slate, like all the ladies here. Been in social for over 10 years now. I feel like I've been a content creator my entire life, though. So I guess that's my side gig slash halfway full gig. Yeah, love everything social. Fun fact about me is that I've never worked at a big brand name company. Startups are my bread and butter. So I've been the first social media hire for 5 different companies now. Six, I guess, well, no, no, five. Because Christina was actually the first social hire here, really. On that note, I'll pass it over to Christina.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
No, the better Christina would still be me, so I can't talk to myself right now. Um,
Followed our feud online. If you know, you know. Um,
that's why everybody sends you my emails.
oh my gosh, guys, can we just, before I intro myself, I get Christina's emails because I was the first late hire, so my email is just my name, and then, hers is not, and I just get all her emails, and it's crazy, and I'm like, oh, this is so frustrating. Anyways, I'm also Christina, and I was one of the first social hires. I know there was other social hires before, but then I was the first one before we brought in two other people, which is great. This is my first go at B2B social, so I've been doing it for a year and a half now. But before that, I was on TV for 5 years. So, like Christina said, so I feel like I've been a content creator my whole life, and I started at the wee age of like 9 years old making iMovies and posting them on YouTube. And now I'm here doing kind of the same thing, but editing on Slate and posting them on Instagram. So same kind of thing, different formats. Yes, was my go-to when I was a youngin because that was my first like place I learned to edit, and it came with my laptop. Anyways, I am the social and community. I do social content with Carmen, and I manage our community, and I've been loving every second of it. It's been super fun to meet social media managers and just interact with y'all and learn about your processes, and I'm just learning so much, and I love it.
I love it. I am grateful. I remember I think it was Carmen when you shared your Slate announcement post on LinkedIn. I think I either remember commenting or thinking that I felt like it was like the Avengers coming together, like your team had just hired. They just looked around and been like, who are all the best people right now and how can I get them on this team? And I will brag for a second, guys watching, that these girls said that I'm an honorary member of the Slate team.
Yes.
Um, I've actually invited them all here today to live out my own dream of pretending I work with them. So we're all fulfilling a fantasy today.
And Sophie, you're in the club.
I like it. I love it. I wear it with pride. But B2B isn't boring. You are, is the title of today's session. Again, I feel like I'm in my bold era this year. I am hosting a conference in September called Everybody Hates Marketing. At some point, you're going to start thinking, like, why does Sophie hate everything? Is Sophie the problem? But maybe it's true. B2B isn't boring. Maybe you are. And I know that it is quite the bold claim. That was the point. But I really do think, and the reason we're here today is unpack that you guys at Slate really have built something that genuinely proves it. Now, before we get into the how, because there are so many moving parts to what you do, and each one of them equally as brilliant as the other, I would love to hear an answer from all of you on what you think boring B2B marketing looks like right now. And then in that question as well, where do you think it comes from? B2B can be fun. You've proved it. So what does it look like when it sucks? And why does it suck? And Christina Lee, I will come to you first.
Okay. I bold take here. No, I think B2B content typically would suck, or I guess that's the thing that I'm going to lead into is talking about the content. I think sometimes it sucks because it sounds really, especially I think in this year specifically, it's so AI coded and generated. It's like everything that we all use AI, in our day to day. But when you start recognizing content that is clearly coming from, those LLMs, I think that becomes really hard because I feel like content before was already bad when they play it very safe because oftentimes B2B is very risk averse. They're mostly like, we have to sound prim and proper. We have to kind of sound a bit like a walking pamphlet. We want to make sure that when people look at us, they take us seriously. And that's kind of been the trope of working in B2B. It's like we're more serious than the more direct to consumer brands where you could sell a product and all this other stuff. And so I find that on top of now everybody leaning into AI to sort of tell them what creativity is, that's the main thing that's wrong. And yeah, all that stems from the fact of like they're all trying to take themselves a little too seriously. But I'll let the other two chime in.
You
You
go,
can go,
Karen.
Carmen. Your
Okay.
mouth
We're both giving it to each
mouth
other.
open. I was like,
I think maybe the like where it all originated from is that a lot of B2B teams probably just didn't have a social person, or they had like someone who was like a growth or like a marketing role or a content marketer where they're like, could you also just post on LinkedIn? And they were like, sure, but it wasn't really their job. And so I think that we're in an era now where we do have like seasoned social marketers or social media marketers at B2B companies now. So I think B2B social has become quite good, but I think that the reputation was earned at a time when it was like everyone's last priority and nobody saw the value in it or why it might elevate a B2B brand. So I think it's just something that's like it's hard to shake off those entrenched kind of like reputations that you get kind of like saddled with. Yeah.
Yeah. And I honestly think, yeah, I mean, I'm seeing in the chat here that a dull design with generic stock images, like that is historically what we know as B2B social. And I'm gonna like lean into SaaS here. The reality is like tech is boring. It's not as exciting as like a new lipstick drop or like a new snack, you know? So at the end of the day, I think like tech is not as exciting as CPG. And I think, it's harder to think outside the box for that kind of stuff. Like if you are I'm trying to think of a B2B brand that isn't just tech, but like an editing software or Google Forms, like all that kind of stuff is ultimately at its core, like not that exciting. So to make that exciting is actually a harder push. And that's why I think B2B has historically been boring as well, just because maybe a product isn't as fun as, yeah, other things could be. So I think that's where this whole thing of B2B is changing now because people are starting to think like CPG, people are starting to think like marketers in different industries. And it's exciting, but I know why it's hard to do that because even I have like blocks, thinking of new ways to be creative in this
I'm
space.
gonna jump off of that, Christina, because as you were saying that, I was thinking in my head how we get stuck into the day to day of talking about software, specifically software or any type of tech that involves like you using the example of a lip gloss, right? If I hold up a lip gloss, if I apply it, if I do all these things, you know exactly what that product is. If I tell you about a software, I not only have to promote it and say, hey, here's some awareness play around this thing exists, but now I have to say, why is it valuable to you and why do you need it right now? And then I have to go down to tell you exactly how you would use it, how you would apply it, and do all these other things. And it gets into the details of it is a little bit more of a complex thing to market than a simple product that you can have in your hand to hand somebody else. So it requires a lot of things that get entangled
Yeah.
into what Carmen was saying with other different roles like growth and product and all these things that have, sort of like a direction of how you present it. And it is challenging to talk about that without not sounding like a stuffy pamphlet.
Yeah. Sometimes I just think how funny it would be if if like a SaaS company like marketed like Rode, like Haley Bieber's Rode products, like you just like get a bunch of people posing with like, the tool and like wind blowing in your hair, which I mean, not a bad idea. This we can just turn this into a brainstorming session, but uh,
Totally.
like I just think about all the ways that you can market like a fun product and then I come to
Yeah.
B2B and you really just have to get creative and it's fun to do that, but it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you said, Carmen, as well. So many B2B teams started as probably a team of one, or maybe they weren't even a marketer. I remember in my first ever job, I worked as an influencer marketing assistant in a boutique agency. And my role was to scout for influencer marketing campaigns. But because I was cool and young and hip, I was 23, just a young spring chicken, it was almost like a phone was shoved in my hand. Like, okay, well, you can do the Instagram as
Mhm.
well. Like, I have no idea how to market an agency, who I'm marketing this agency to. And I think that marketing itself has become quite the spectacle. I love, Christina, that you mentioned Rode. I reference them all the time. It's like the best marketing ever. I think they're so cool. But when you're a team of one or a team of three marketing something completely different, it can be really hard and challenging, I imagine, not to compare to, well, they're doing really cool and exciting stuff. I'm just doing this. Not that there's any just about it, because you guys watching, all of you are doing a fantastic job. But coming to you, back to you, Christina Lee, I want to learn a little bit more about how you guys do content. In a recent interview, I think it was the interview you did for the LinkedIn Bio Substack,
Mm.
if I remember right? Of which, when Christina's talking, I'll find the link for you guys and I'll put it in the chat because one of my favorite Substacks, and two, one of my favorite interviews. So I will get that for you guys. But Christina, you said in an interview when you were asked how you, at Slate, you don't ask how do we grow the Slate page? You ask how do we increase Slate's surface area on LinkedIn, which I absolutely loved.
Yeah.
And in the interview, you went on to describe it as layered. Obviously, you have your brand page, your employee posts, which are also awesome, your comments, you do brand partnerships on the platform as well. You obviously have your customers on there as well. And you said that you've assigned swim lanes across the team so everyone knows what they own.
Yeah.
I would love you to walk us through kind of what that looks like in practice. And in that as well, is there any advice that you would give to B2B teams that I guess aren't doing that? They're rolling with that first question of how do we grow our LinkedIn page?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So when I first joined the company, one of the things that we talked about was around where is our biggest opportunity right now? If we have no budget, if we have nothing, we have no ability to be able to spend on anything, where's our easiest lever to be able to grow our customer base? And in B2B, it is very easy. It's not very, but it's a lot easier to sell on LinkedIn than it is on Instagram, for example. So LinkedIn being the channel of that we would prioritize, Eric, our co-founder, was pretty strategic with his hires, where he saw LinkedIn as an opportunity, and he was like, okay, if I want to tap into this platform and I want to be able to get our message out there, why would I not hire some folks who are already creating content that is, building a stronger personal brand on LinkedIn? And so he brought Christina in because she is the talent. She's an actress. She is a wonderful content creator. This is the last time I'm saying anything nice about her.
No, keep going.
So,
I love
this. No. That's enough for today. I feel like I've hit my limit. Yes. But so, he hired Christina, and then shortly after that, she obviously provided a lot of value. Here's another compliment coming your way, but she is only a solo person. And so he was like, we need more. So let's bring on Christina Lee. I came on as a contractor. I was mostly talking about product marketing, and I didn't really understand what Slate was doing at the time. But as soon as I came in within like a couple of weeks, I immediately was sold on our trajectory. And I was like, okay, so they brought me in, head of marketing, and then we brought in Carmen, who is already building a strong reputation, being extremely analytical and highly deeply engaged in this atmosphere. So the three of us, that was the first initial phase, was like, if we hire three folks who are already creating content because we know the brand page is not going to grow as much, let's leverage our employees in a way. So bringing the three of us in with all different ideas, we're like, okay, now there's three of us. How can we triple the efforts that we're doing, right? So when we were talking about creating swim lanes, we started thinking, and I'm trying to condense all of this very high level, but we were thinking, okay, well, if we're all creating strong content, that's great, but what else can we all do? So Christina Pero is really great at doing skits. She's great at building community. She owns our webinar series. She does a lot of the live events and everything like that. Carmen is actually, if we have somebody who's very social strategic and can develop growth strategies and handle the content building for the brand as well as the employees, let's have her focus on that area. And then I'm handling a lot of the product talks and then events, in-person events and stuff, and also our influencer marketing. So there was different areas of how we could not only utilize our brand channel, but then we're utilizing our employee channel. And then now we're touching into customer advocacy, which Christina pairs with our customer success team to kind of help, leverage. And then we have our social content. And then we also have our creators in residence, which that develops out into 3 different programs that we have with that. And then we also have our social club in real life events that people attend. So there's just a lot of things that, requires a lot of brain power. And I always say, when you choose to work in a startup, you choose to drink straight out of the fire hose every single day, and you must enjoy getting waterboarded that way. There's some type of weird torture level there, but that's pretty much how we are. We operate at this level of crazy efficiency because I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it, guys. Like it's absurd when I say it, but we do a lot when we measure it all out. And the all of that ties back to how can we get the most awareness and attention, which we did successfully. Like Christina and Eric and the team had already done successfully in terms of the brand awareness play of knowing what Slate is. Carmen and I come in and now it's like, okay, so now people love the brand. They like the people who are working there. How can we encourage them to also understand what we offer, what we do, what's the solution, why we're there for social teams? So that's like this current phase that we're in right now. So yeah, that was a lot.
No,
I
it's
once heard that
no.
God gives B2B to his strongest warriors. Somebody tweeted that once, and I was like, yes.
Did Eric tweet that?
Or not tweet. I don't know. It was on LinkedIn somewhere. I wish I could give credit to some whoever tweeted that.
If it's one or two sentences, it's a tweet forever.
Yeah.
I don't care
Yeah,
what
Yeah.
platform it's
it's
on, it's
tweet.
a tweet. Yeah.
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 Twitter doesn't exist anymore, but it's a tweet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Hashtag.
It will always be Twitter to me. And like I cannot X like, oh, I saw it on X. Oh, I saw it on Twitter. Like
Yeah.
latter, it's just Elon doesn't exist to me. So
Elon does not
No.
exist to me.
I am I love that though, Christina. And I agree. I'm a team of one. I have two freelancers on my team, and I always find myself when I introduce my business and I talk about what I do, I get to the end of the list and you sit back and you're like, holy cow, like do I actually do all of those things? And I know you described it as like chaos sometimes, but I
Yeah.
love how you describe it as your swim lanes. And I think
Mm.
that what especially smaller teams or like solo marketers as well, it can be such a challenge to know what goes where. And
Yeah.
equally, what I really value, or what it seems like about what you guys do, is everything has its own place. Not everything's for acquisition, not everything's for community, not everything's for
Right.
visibility. There's very clear layers to your strategy, but obviously it took a while. It took a while to get
Yes.
there, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't happen in a day.
No, it's certainly not. And I think that's the hard part is like, especially when we're living in the era where everybody wants instant gratification, we often have to remind ourselves, like, especially if organic growth takes a while to build, and there is a reputation that needs to, as the TikTokers would say, you need to build it brick by brick. And so sometimes it could be, if I'm being honest, sometimes it could be really hard because you want everything to yield instant results. Like I there were times where I was just like, between the three of us, why do we not a bajillion demos inside Slate today? Like, what do you mean? I thought I explained that pretty, really well. But it just goes to show that everybody, you really have to kind of build up this mindset of what is the mission that you're trying to drive across in the business that you're doing and orient yourself around that. And that guides you a lot better than just being like, I got to sell Slate tomorrow and panic when you don't. So,
Brilliant advice, and hopefully comforting for some of you guys watching it as well. I love seeing people that I see having it all together online, peel back the curtain, and they're like, it's actually kind of crazy back here. And you're like, oh, well, that's cool because it is for me too. So all these perfect ladies here, they struggle
Oh
like
my
you.
God.
Yes.
I like do not have my shit together. I mean, Christina Pirro can attest to this. We have a contest about who is more of a type B personality, and I think I'm always in the lead. Like
Yeah.
rarely, you sometimes will pull into the lead for a day or two, but I'm type B to a
wait,
T.
wait, wait, wait.
Yeah,
What would you guys list me as then?
Oh, so type A.
type A.
Oh, oh,
Yeah,
Type A for sure.
yeah, yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
learning so much about myself today.
I just like I try to be type A and then I fail because I think I have ADHD and it's just not helpful when I'm like trying to manage documents and I'm like, "Meh." Anyways, that's inside of my brain. That's what it sounds like in there.
I mean, the inside of your brain is clearly great, Christina.
Thank you.
You
Wow.
know it's great.
That
And
makes
I actually want to come to you next to talk a bit about your community. I think when I speak to people in marketing and we talk about B2B and community, and it's like, well, how do you do that? And I think the natural assumption is that people in B2B don't care. They're not like road fans or road customers, or I've got my Miffy pen here, so we'll use Miffy as an example. They're
No.
not like Miffy super fans. How do you band people together over something that we feel is boring?
Yeah.
Now, I know that you guys have your webinar series, which is absolutely fantastic. I will link all of you guys in an email afterwards, you guys watching, all of the Slate links so you guys can check it out. But you have your kind of monthly-ish webinar series, right? The social club. And your webinar series is less kind of like, here's our products. And the way I experience my session with you guys and the ones that I've seen really feel like a virtual hug, a venting session, like just a chance for people in marketing to get together and love and hate what they do all in the same time. I think it's a pretty unusual thing for B2B brands to build. I've partnered as a creator with B2B brands in the past to do a webinar with them. Um, and it always just ends up being a lead magnet. How can we talk about the tool? Can we do a demo halfway through? I would love to learn a little bit more about where the idea to do something a little bit different came from. And then in that as well, how do you make the case internally for content or programs that maybe isn't directly selling anything?
Yeah. I will say the social club was like in its infancy when I joined, so it was already kind of a concept. But I know that my goal was to just ultimately have a really great theme every month that people related to, that especially our ICP. Like we were targeting our ICP, and at the end of the day, like we want we want recognition from the people we're trying to reach. We want people to like us, the people that we're trying to get to use our product. But ultimately, every month, I just wanted a really cool topic that everyone related to, and I wanted really great panelists. And I think like having brand name panelists on your webinar is just really great for, they put it on their LinkedIn pages, and then you get new audiences tuned in. And there's always some sort of like little pitch at the beginning or end about Slate, which I think is important, especially if you are a sales or SaaS software, just to like just give everyone the spiel of who you are, what you do. But ultimately, the webinar is very top funnel, and we're trying to reach a demographic of like social media managers and marketers, because ultimately, like we said earlier in this chat, like there's a lot of people who are on a team of one who need that help and who need that community. And I would say that would go for any type of B2B or SaaS software. There's a lot of communities out there that where people are solo or trying to learn from each other. So ultimately, we just wanted to create a space where people could come together, learn from each other, especially social media. And I think we have the benefit of marketing to social media teams, and I think they're one of the most fun groups to market to. I don't know what it would be like to market to people who like are in cybersecurity, so that would be a whole other thing. Um, but ultimately, like creating that program and getting it built up and doing it every month and having that consistency, it started to grow naturally because people just wanted to learn from each other. So I didn't even really have to make a case for why it was important, but the reason it would be important and the reason that anybody watching could go to their team and say this is important is because you want to build trust ultimately. Um, at the end of the day, when somebody needs a tool and they are thinking through a variety of options, and they can think of Slate being an option, and they're like, hey, I know those people on LinkedIn and I've attended their webinars and they seem like they really know what they're talking about. And we market ourselves as like a tool built for social media managers by social media managers. So once you establish that trust through these like top funnel webinars, you're really creating a space where people just think of you, and it comes to the top of their mind when they're looking for like a new product or tool. And it's like Christina was saying, it's organic and it takes time to build up, but as you build that consistency and as you like build that trust with people, I think it's like ultimately a natural funnel into booking a demo with you. And we've started doing other webinars where we are more bottom funnel, and we're trying to like bring everyone from that top funnel webinar to our bottom funnel webinar, but it's never pushy. It's always like, hey, you've attended this cool webinar. If you want to learn more about a product, you can attend this other one that we have next, like in a couple of weeks from now, and learn more. So it's like a funnel, of course, and that's what it's called, but it's cool to see people go from like top funnel webinar to bottom funnel and just like really hear how much people love your product because they trust the people in front of the screens.
Yeah,
So I would say that's the best case to make. It's just like it's organic, it takes time, but it builds trust.
fantastic. And
Yeah,
your social club is so much more than just webinars now,
yeah,
too, right? Obviously, you've been doing IRL events, which I always feel like I'm like clawing through my screen because I have the most FOMO. So if you
We're
guys,
coming to London soon. It's on our radar.
okay, I will, wherever you're staying, I will be, you know, like the Met Gala when the celebs come out, there's like people waiting there for their autographs. That's going to be sit outside your hotel.
Wait, can we have
You'll
our
be in the
own Met Gala?
Sure.
I think
Yeah.
so. Let's do it.
I think we should have our own Met Gala, but like social marketers for marketers.
Really great.
You
Someone write
know,
this down.
yeah,
Put it
somebody do
up.
this.
So many fun ideas coming out of this chat.
I've heard at least two so far. It's going well. So
We're
you
the idea generators.
you've got your webinar series. You are hosting the Social Club in person now as well, which is really cool. But I know you also have your like huge and really awesome Slack channel too, right?
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
yeah, cool. My question is about the work behind that. So kind of two questions in one. First part is bringing people together in the form of a community actually important for a B2B brand, or is it just a nice to have? And then in that question as well, for any of these guys considering like, okay, cool, like this is great, I would love to bring our customers together in a virtual capacity. Do you have any kind of top tips or recommendations for keeping a space active rather than we've seen it so many times, right? Like a brand launches their broadcast channel or a Slack community or WhatsApp, and within 2 weeks, nothing's happening in there. So is it a necessity? How do you balance that? And then in that as well, you guys do such a great job. How do you nurture the people in that?
Yeah. The Slack community was honestly built out of our webinars and seeing everyone on the chat room being like, oh, I wish we could continue this conversation, and so many questions coming in. And we just saw like a gap. We just saw like a gap specifically with our demographic. Like there's a lot of channels out there and there's a lot of Slack communities, but might as well build one and build it off of our webinar. So we started a Slack literally, I think November of last year, and I made one post about it and it went crazy. I think we got 500 people in our Slack community overnight, which was wild. And I had never managed a community before, so I was kind of like in over my head. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know that communities are hard to keep alive, which it is true. It's hard to keep alive if you don't have a dedicated person for it. Um, the reason I do think it's important is because once again, I don't know if it's important for every single community. I would have to think about that a little bit more. But for our community specifically, who wanted a space to learn from each other outside of our 1 hour webinars monthly, we saw that need and we saw it as a perfect opportunity to like bring people together to talk on Slack and various channels about the algorithm and Instagram and TikTok and what's happening on, what's happening with Meta Business Suite and all this stuff. So I do think it was important for us, and I can see a case being made for different like SaaS and B2B companies, depending on like who your demographic is. Everyone wants a place to chat and talk through ideas, right? So whether it's for social media marketers or lawyers in tech, like maybe there's an area for that as well. Everybody wants to learn what other people are doing in this space. So I would say it was essential for us, and I can see a case being made for other people and it being kind of an essential place for that. I think in community, the first and most important thing is to be active yourself. If you're starting a community, you can't just let it exist and not do anything about it. There's a lot of effort that goes into those initial days. Having rhythms, having exciting gamified opportunities. For people to continuously engage, because there's a lot of lurkers. A lot of people have joined our channel and just like to lurk, but the way to engage people is actually to gamify the experience, to make it fun for people to engage. When somebody asks a question, to be like one of the first people in the chat. So it requires a lot of internal effort as well, and being like, hey, somebody asked this question, I'm going to tag this person who can tap into this conversation. So being very like highly aware of who's in your community and who you can tap into various conversations. Because as soon as someone asks a question in a community and nobody responds, it dies. They don't want to engage again. So being very on in the initial few days when somebody's joining is important. And then on top of that, like community seems to be like, it's like a term that's been thrown around, like community. And a lot of people say, I'm building my LinkedIn community, but you really have to make it a place for two-way conversation and not just a place where you're selling all the time. We have a specific webinar channel and we have a specific Slate customers channel, but otherwise we keep it very open. We try not to insert ourselves too much because then it's not a community, then it's a broadcast channel. And we want to differentiate from those people who are just like advertising what they're doing all the time. And we want it to be a space of collaboration. So overall, it's been going really well. We just hit 1,000 people yesterday, which is really cool. And community building has been essential for us. And I would say bring it back to, think of a, if you're going to bring this back to your leadership, think of like why you need a community. If it's going to be an acquisition community where you're trying to build new customers and what that looks like, or if it's a community for your internal customers. There's like so many options, but make sure to think through what you want it to be before you go to your leadership and start it, because it's a huge undertaking. And I would say something that wasn't a part of my job last year is now like 30% of my job. So it's big, it's important, but just make sure you know your why when you start a community. Yeah.
Great. I launched our community membership, which is kind of like the heart of PLM, in April 2024, so just over 2 years ago. I freelanced through PLM for 4 years at the start of my career. I got rid of all of my clients, best day ever. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to build a business and it's going to be all around this membership and it's going to be so fun. It's going to be easy. We have great engagement on socials. Like, how hard can it be to just put people that want to talk in a space and let them talk? I think it's the hardest thing. It's the most rewarding thing. And I see so many of you guys in the chat as well, scrolling through, who are in said closed community, and it's the light of my life. But I completely agree. It cannot be underestimated, the kind of fuel that it needs to create that fire. And to your one of your earlier points, I was on a podcast earlier this year talking about community and advocacy. And one of the points that we explored that I feel like I've honked on about since is that if you don't give your customers somewhere to talk, they're just going to find one themselves, whether it's in an unowned Reddit thread, whether it's in a competitor's comment section. If you're not doing it, someone else probably is. So I agree, and I love the case. Something that I think we should all consider, for sure. Now, I want to come to you next, Carmen, because I think that you sit in a really interesting position between obviously someone that works in B2B, but also as a creator as well. I think I saw your content pre-Slate. I think I was following you before you joined this fantastic team. And I think, again, that's why I was so excited when you joined the team, because I was like, this person is famous to me. I love this team. They have a really cool new hire. So I was very excited at everything coming together. So my question is, with your experience on both sides, one being a content creator in your own right, and then also working in B2B, what would you say to a B2B social media manager? Or I guess equally, like, how important do you think it is for someone who works in a B2B setting to think like a creator? I see it recommended a lot. So what does it mean to think like a creator? How do you bring your creatorship to your work? And what advice would you give to anyone in B2B that would maybe like to marry those two schools of thought?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's funny because I still don't really know if I like, I don't think of myself as a content creator, and yet I create content and I post it online, and that's exactly what a content creator does. But I think we're also kind of talking about personal brands, right? Like, I mean, being a content creator on LinkedIn is also cultivating a personal brand. And like, that's, I feel, a very contentious topic right now, you know, whether or not people need to have personal brands, or should marketers be required to have personal brands. And I kind of get both sides, where there's lots of people who feel like that's an unfair sort of like requirement or expectation for people. And I empathize with that. Like, you know, we work in social, we are very online, and, you know, there are lots of downsides to like putting your face and your opinions out there. Truthfully, on LinkedIn, I don't think there's a ton of downside, aside from the fact that your friends will think you're cringe. But I think that like on LinkedIn or on Instagram and TikTok, you get more of the sort of like hate comments, which you know, you have to decide how you want to deal with those. But in terms of like people who are like, I would like to create more, or I want to have a personal brand, I really didn't even approach it until maybe when I just entered tech. Like I used to work in the B2C world. Now I started in tech in 2024. And I like my reason for doing it was that I wasn't working on very creative projects. I had just left a very creative kind of industry, and I was like really starved for like some Instagram and TikTok kind of work. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll just post on the side and see how that feels. And it's funny because, technically speaking, if we're like thinking about work in units of time, I work more now because I create content on the side. But I felt it was very like filled my cup, to be able to do something where I called the shots. I didn't have to put it through like a legal team or something like that, or I didn't have to worry that like, oh, what's HR going to think about this? Or like, am I not striking the right amount of humor? So I don't know. I don't know if I'm answering this question right, if it's like advice or like how I approach creating content on the side. But for me, it was honestly just like a kind of like brain survival move because I felt so bored in my job, and I was like, I got to do something. I think there was also this piece where, and I feel like a lot of social folks can relate to this. I just like when I left B2C and went into tech, I like could not get in an important meeting to save my life. Like I could not get in front of a higher level manager. It was impossible to get much like respect. I had a lot of respect from my direct manager, and she's amazing. But I don't work with her anymore, but she is an amazing person. But I just was like, oh, maybe if I create content, I can kind of like tell people like what I'm thinking and sort of like get my work to be a little more visible. So I don't know, I'm kind of running in circles a little bit here, but I think that my feeling about people who are thinking about creating content is that I feel like position it less as like, oh, should I or shouldn't I be cringe, and more like, should I or shouldn't I make my work visible? And I would say like, I very much encourage you to make your work more visible to more people.
I agree. I love what you were saying there as well. I started PLM in June 2020, so almost 6 years ago. And I was a
Yeah.
student at the time. I worked in an influencer marketing agency at the time, and running their social media was me sending a really bad Canva graphic to my boss, him saying this absolutely sucks, but not telling me what he wanted. And I found that
Yeah.
area of my career being I was in an agency role. I found it quite unfulfilling creatively. So for those
Yeah.
guys, and I saw someone in the chat talking about working in like healthcare or law, where maybe you don't get to have fun with video or you don't get to have fun with copy. I love that thought, like you're saying, of like, well, maybe can this be your creative outlet? And more than just a creative outlet, obviously, you reap the rewards of visibility, getting in front of new people, building amazing connections. So I think that is a fantastic answer and hopefully inspiring for any of you maybe thinking of doing your own thing
Could I
too.
also add a note here as like a little bit of a footnote just from the content creation side? I feel like a lot of brands hesitate with their employees developing personal brand. That always stems from a place of fear of a couple of things of like, one, if we have employees who post consistently, have a really strong personal brand, is that a liability for us if they like go off the rails and do all these other things? But I always challenge brands to kind of look at the upside for it, especially like coming from Slate. We were very specific of hiring people with strong personal brands. Each one of us create a lot of content in our areas. And I find that a lot of questions I get is, should we hire people who have personal brands? Like, is that a thing? Or should we hire like content creators to do all this? Like, it is a point of they realize the benefits that come from hiring folks with strong brands and everything, because it does impact the business in a very positive way. Like if we look at the growth trajectory of where Slate is today and where it's going versus like last year around this time, it's probably a lot of a more accelerated rate because there's more awareness around. So I do think there's a point, and one of the things Carmen and I talk about a lot before we even started working together, because we were like, friends for I think online for maybe a couple of years beforehand. And I remember we talked a lot about personal brand building, and the topic always circled around is it also gives personally for everybody who's listening of whether or not you should be creating content. It does give you a sense of insurance because they do think twice about treating you like shit. in the workplace. And that was where I came, dead ass. That's where I came from. I came, like, the reason why I started building more content, like promoting myself more, is, things that were more, yes, creatively invigorating, things that, I want to say and build a community around. But for the most part, I want to make sure I never have to apply for a job ever again because my work is visible, like Carmen was saying. And two, I also want to make sure that they think twice about firing me. And because obviously, like, I'm an adult, I would never do anything to purposely get fired in that sense where I'm overly bold or anything like that. But I do want to have that piece of insurance where it's just like, Christina shares a lot of content online. Maybe we should not treat her like shit. And that's my personal thing with it. So if anybody ever needs a little push about building your personal brand online, do it for that.
No, it's great advice. I agree. I remember when I was in my teens, my mum used to like push me and I'd like go and give my CV out in like retail stores to try and get a job. And I remember she always used to say to me, and I'm sure many of your parents said the same, and it was like, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And I remember my mum, I'm sure she might be watching actually. She tunes into my webinars sometimes, even though she has no
We
idea
love
what's going
supportive
on.
parents.
Make her here.
Oh, hey mom,
This
she's a
is
sweetheart. But I remember like catching up with her a while ago and talking like trying to explain personal branding and this thought of like it's not even like it's not what you know, it's not even who you know, but every opportunity in my career has come from who knows me. So
Yep.
like extra on that visibility piece and I love that like almost insurance policy for what comes next, no matter what happens now. I agree.
so good.
Let's go to some audience Q&A, shall we? I have so many other questions I would love to ask you guys, but you guys watching, any that we have missed from my list? These amazing women have Substacks and Instagrams and share content everywhere where you can learn so much more. So in my follow-up email, I will link everything that you might need. But to maximize our time with your brilliant brains, let's go to your question. So guys, any questions you do have, you can either put them in the chat, and if you add a question mark, because it's a question, Riverside will magically pick it up and put it in my Q&A box for me. Otherwise, if you do see the Q&A tab and want to put it in there, either or, whatever is easier for you guys. I will start with this one from Sarah because it is at the top of my list. And I'll pose this to all of you, so feel free to just jump in, whoever feels compelled to answer. But Sarah has asked, do you have any recommendations for differentiating brand voice for B2B audiences on LinkedIn versus more casual audiences on Instagram, but making sure they're still aligned? So kind of being different people in different places. What would your advice be and how do you balance that?
Like thinking like part I'm like gonna play devil's advocate for a moment maybe. I feel like Christina Lee, you'll have a better answer than me. But like I think I would say our voice probably isn't different on Instagram versus LinkedIn. It's more just that I think like the audience or algorithms or a combo of all of the above kind of like support a different style of caption. So I would say like on LinkedIn, you can add a little more value in the caption, whereas like Instagram, I would kind of like stay away from that. So core voice, I think I tend to keep the same, but I try to be smart about like what is just sort of like platform fluency of each of those. And I think it's important to note that you can renegotiate voice. Like if you decide, hey, for like H1, we've been kind of riding with this like very like a polite and safe tone, and we want to just branch out a little bit. I think you can renegotiate for H2. Like I don't think your voice is set in stone, but yeah, I would say personally speaking, and with Slate, I tend to think of our voice as aligned throughout all the platforms, but then the way that we express that on each platform is more just about kind of like how each platform treats attention spans and algorithms a little bit. So
Yeah, I want to add, like, I always think of like what are audiences coming to a platform for. I think like people go to LinkedIn and Instagram for di very different reasons. Like
yes,
I go to
totally.
Instagram to enjoy myself, and I do for LinkedIn as well, but I'm more intentional with LinkedIn. Like I'm engaging more, I'm not lurking as much. My attention span's a little higher because I'm willing to like spend time on like a video, watching a video or reading a post. Whereas on Instagram, if something doesn't entertain me in the first 3 seconds, I'm like gone. So I think, yeah, like Carmen was saying, it's like what are audiences coming to those platforms for, and how are you curating content for those platforms to meet your audience's desires from the platform?
Great advice. We have oh, every time someone asks a question, it bumps me back down to the bottom where I don't want to be. A question for you, I imagine, Christina Lee, but if this isn't, throw it to one of the other ladies. This is about your influencer programs, which I know we haven't touched on much today, so maybe this would be a nice question to touch on that. So Jessie has asked, what questions do you ask of potential influencers for your programs to ensure that they are the right fit?
Oh, this is a great question. It really all is dependent on, I look at it through two different lens. One is through the campaign lens of what is the purpose of our campaign. If it's to scrub up awareness, I generally just go with somebody who has a broader reach, which includes their following, their engagement rates, and what would have you. But currently, right now, so I said earlier that we work in as we approach influencer marketing in two different capacity, where one, we have the built-in creator in residence program, which are the influencers that we'll work with again and again, and they're kind of like our in-house creators in a way. And then your stereotypical influencer marketing, which is, based on campaign. And I split them into program versus campaign because for us, Slate, like the awareness play of not just the brand perspective, but more so of like what Slate actually offers, which again, for those of you who don't know, we are a content creation software. So think like CapCut versus Canva and Dropbox, but for social media marketing teams. We specifically want to work with creators that have a strong ability to create content. Like video content is a big standout for us, but also we love like anything that we offer solution for. So if you come onto our platform and you can create carousel posts or create really like strong content that people engage with, that's generally the only thing I look for this program. So it's just somebody who has this ability to create great content, because I have people who have like 10,000 followers, I have people who have 3,000 followers, I have people who have 100,000 followers. So our range of who we work with is really dependent on whether or not they can create great content. But that's like ourselves specifically. If I were doing this for another company, like a fuel company that I used to work at, I'd probably, I don't know, look at it a little bit differently. So it's all dependent on needs.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
I just saw a good question I wanted to throw your way, Carmen, but it's disappeared from my list. Ah, it's here. And it's from Milena. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. And this question is, how do you avoid the creative burnout of juggling marketing as a career and then creating content in your spare time?
Yeah, I mean, good question. I can't say that I'm not like burnt to a crisp right now. So I don't know if I have like a great answer for you. I think other people are probably a little bit better at boundaries than I am. Like I think if I didn't have children, I would work 17 hours a day and just be like, not leave my desk. So I'm glad. Maybe my advice is have kids. Just have a few
Different
kids
type of
and
burnout.
yeah, true. They'll give you a different type of burnout, but they really require you to leave your computer screen at certain points throughout the day. I'm sorry, this is a terrible answer, but I truthfully, I think if I were to give you an answer, it would be really disingenuous. If I was like, I always take a break and I always use my brick and everything, like I don't. Um, all I would say is that there is like a kind of irony in the more that I work, which is that when I do content creation, I love that it's so fast, it's so iterative. I don't have to put it through like anyone, like not that we don't have like crazy approval rounds at Slate. Like I don't find the approval rounds at Slate difficult. They're very collaborative. But let's say you do work for a company where that is a thing. there's something about creating content that I find really exhilarating because it's this really fast feedback loop. So that's something that I'm willing to like. I'm willing to sacrifice sleep or a little bit more personal time because I do feel pretty like my batteries get charged from these things. But in terms of like overall boundaries and how to avoid burnout, I'm not your gal.
You can talk a lot about work-work balance.
Yeah, I have a lot of work balance. Basically, I make time for personal creation in the evenings and or at really early mornings. So yeah, I have a work balance, but sorry, I think her name was Rachel. Apologies, Rachel. That was a terrible answer. It's an honest one.
And I think that's what people really need to hear. I speak to a lot of people about being a creator and how my business has got to where it is. But it has been 6 years of being unhealthily obsessed. As I told you,
Yeah.
my screen time's down from 12 hours to 10 hours, which, well,
Yeah.
thank you, clap
Rocket.
away. Thanks, girls and boys. But I agree with
Yeah.
what you were saying, Carmen, like finding something that you're excited about. For me,
I will
like,
say,
go on.
sorry, I was talking to my neighbor who's a lawyer, and I'm pointing over here. He lives over here on this side of my house, and I was saying I felt really bad about like just being in this mode where I've been working so much. And he was like, you know what? There's seasons. Sometimes we have a season where we work a lot, maybe a little too much, you know? And then we have some seasons where we can take some more time. And like, I live in Canada. I had a long mat leave. Like I didn't go back to work for almost 18 months with my first kid. So like I have had seasons where I have done very little work and then seasons where I've done lots of work. And that's maybe the one kind of like saving grace I would offer is that like be easy on yourself if you're like in a bit of a grind because you can have a season where you're not in a grind. So
Mhm.
Great advice. I know we are almost at time, but Grace's question in the Q&A box has had a lot of love. So I'm gonna pitch it to all of you. Whoever wants to pick it up, go ahead. It's a long one, so I'm gonna press show on screen. Whether it will all come up, I don't know, but I'll read it out to you anyway. So Grace has said some B2B brands do naturally have more leverage to use humor or take a more playful approach to their marketing. But in Grace's case, as a building services consultancy, it is hard. Some of their projects span 10 years plus, and they're selling contracts worth millions of pounds. They're speaking to property developers, asset owners who are likely 40 plus year old men. So, in any of your experiences, how would you approach marketing for a brand and a target audience like this? So, for the guys in the audience that maybe don't have the capacity to just be more fun.
Ma- oh, go
you want
ahead.
to go through?
No, I just want to say just one quick sentence. My immediate thought is like, think about what these 40 plus year old men like to watch on their spare time. Like, my dad is in his 60s now and he still enjoys TikTok and everything and still enjoys watching entertaining content. So I wouldn't stray away from like anything entertaining because you're thinking like that demographic might not be into that. So that's just my immediate thought that I wanted to put out there. Think about
There were
your ICP,
people
what they would
in
enjoy.
the chat who were saying that like, hey, we have like a lot of like restrictive regulations and stuff like that. And I think sometimes it's worth having a conversation, especially if you're coming into a new role or you're trying to assess whether or not you want to take on like a client, to say like, hey, do you want a social media strategy or do you want an external comms function? Because I think some companies really just need an external comms and they're like, here's what's going on at our company, here's what you need to know, we're going to tell you at regular intervals. And I think that that's like helps both parties make a better decision. If the company's like, look, we're not trying to make a skit, and the social media person can be like, sounds like you need kind of like a social media contractor. Do I or don't I want to take on that? I just think like, yeah, there needs to be like a frank conversation about like, do you want me to go off and try to create a creative social media, you know,
Mhm.
new brand for you or something, or do you just need an external comms person? I think there's a time and a place for that conversation.
Yeah. Because ultimately, like, if that's not what you want while working for the company, like maybe it's worth thinking about like a career pivot because that is such a good conversation. If that's all they're looking for, then and you don't want to be doing that, then there's a lot of people out there who are willing to be external comms and do that. But I think, yeah, it's worth having that honest conversation so that you know where you want to be and you know where they want to be, and then you can just go from there. That's really good advice, Carmen.
Fantastic advice. It reminds me of that saying, is it like you can't fit a square peg in a round hole? Is that what people
Hmm.
say? So
Yeah.
exactly that. Yeah, if they want something different to what you want to deliver. And I think as well, Carmen, that's such a great question because how many companies don't know what they want, but no one's ever stopped to ask them. They just think we need a social media girl, we need an intern, we need a social media manager, but
And maybe
Hmm.
that starts at like the interview phase too. It's like, what are you actually looking for so that you know what you're getting into before you're like, thrown off and you're like, whoa, 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 I thought this is what you were hiring for, kind of.
We appreciate that too. Somebody
Yeah.
having the wherewithal to be like, look, this is what it sounds like you want, and the JD doesn't really match that. Like, do you want to reconcile these two things or, yeah.
absolutely. Great advice. Well, ladies, thank you. This hour has flown by, but thank you so, so much. When I was planning this series, I knew I wanted a session about B2B because I know that a lot of our guys in our membership, but also like I know from experience it can be a real hard gig, man. And so I think sessions like this for people to see the people doing it, being really honest, is one really appreciated, but also to get a peek behind the curtain because you guys are doing such fantastic stuff is also really, really valued. So the biggest thank you to all three of you for joining me for our first session
Thanks for having us
today.
on.
Thanks for having us.
You're the best.
Good.
Always love a PLM webinar
Yeah.
series.
We have fun. We have fun here. And you guys watching as well, thank you so much for tuning in. And I was pinging polls your way because I was having fun writing them. You guys did them all and all of your questions. The replay, all of the links and whatnot will be in your inboxes later today. If you're watching this on the replay, thank you for joining. If you can screenshot at a point where we all look good and then post to LinkedIn, it's appreciated.
No,
Wonderful. Well, with that, girls and boys, have a wonderful rest of your day, rest of your afternoon, rest of your evening. And I will see you next Thursday for our second session. And until then, have a good one. I'll see you later, guys. Bye
bye
bye.
everyone.
Doodles.